안녕하세요. 무비프레스 시청자 여러분. 아주 세계적으로 유명한 감독님 브라이언 감독님을 모시고 인터뷰를 진행하게 됐습니다.
Hello, 무비프레스. I'm so happy to be here with you. I am here in Busan as a guest to be the dean of the film school, the fantastic film school. And also, we are screening two of my old movies. One that I produced that Stuart Gordon directed named Dagon, an H.P. Lovecraft movie. And then the other is Sosaiorty, which is the first movie that I directed. After each of these screenings, I give a master class and a Q&A.
This is the key to creating life, parts, reanimated parts.
Jeffrey Combs is Herbert West. I met him when we made the movie Reanimator, and he got the title role of Herbert West, which is based on the H.P. Lovecraft story. Stuart Gordon directed the movie, and Jeffrey Combs made a big name for himself because of his delightful and very great performance as Herbert West. After that, he was in many, many more movies, including From Beyond, which I made with Stuart Gordon, and also Bride of Reanimator, which I directed, and also many more movies with Stuart Gordon, and a couple more that I directed. So I consider Jeffrey Combs a friend and someone who is really a part of my professional and personal life.
What is it? Are you all right?
Barbara Crampton is very similar to Jeffrey Combs. I met her when we cast the movie Reanimator, and she played the female lead in the movie Reanimator and became the victim of the villain, Dr. Hill. Barbara Crampton was a really great actress in Reanimator, and she went on to do many other horror movies with Stuart Gordon, and now, these days, she is now producing as well as acting in horror movies. She's very active and has made some movies recently, such as Jacob's Wife, and her upcoming movie based on a Lovecraft story called A Suitable Flesh, that is directed by Joe Lynch and written by Dennis Paoli, the same writer of Reanimator. I consider Barbara Crampton a good friend and a great genre actress. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids was the one big studio movie I ever did. And this was after Stuart Gordon and I made Reanimator, Dolls, and From Beyond. We decided that we should make a movie for our children because the movies we were making were so horror. We both have children, we have families, and we wanted to make a Disney style of movie. And I told Stuart that I had always imagined when I was a child, I would lie down in the grass and look through the grass and imagine the grass being giant, big, and what an adventure it would be to ride on a bee or on an ant. And so I mentioned that to Stuart, and he said, oh, I think we should make a movie based on that, and the father should be an inventor that's inventing a shrinking ray, and he should shrink his kids down accidentally. They should get thrown out in the backyard and then have to make their way home. And we both loved the idea, and we said, let's take it to Disney because this should be a Disney movie. So we presented it to Disney, and they agreed. And so we developed the movie with Stuart Gordon directing and me producing. And we both wrote the story with another writer, Ed Naha. And so we actually built all the sets. We were shooting it in Mexico. But at the last minute, Stuart Gordon had to quit the movie for health reasons. So another director directed it. But it's Honey, I Shrunk the Kids for me is a great thing because I love the movie. It's a children's movie and a lot of people like it. And I love seeing some of the ideas that I had and Stuart had up being so famous with the whole world. Well, Stuart Gordon was a good friend of mine, and we began our movie career together. Stuart was already a professional director when I met him. He had been directing live theater in Chicago for about 10 years or more when I went to Chicago to meet him as a potential director of a horror movie. I had moved to Los Angeles because I wanted to make movies, and I was borrowing money to make a movie, a low-budget movie, and that movie would be a horror movie because that was my taste. When I went to see Stuart, I was so impressed with him, and we got along real well, and we were both horror fans, that I asked him if he would direct a movie for me. And he said that he had the idea of making a movie based on the works of Lovecraft named Herbert West Reanimator. And so from that, we developed a movie script and shot Reanimator. From that, Stuart Gordon and myself and our families became good friends. We all moved to Italy to make 2 movies, Dolls and From Beyond. And I've made many other movies collaborating with Stuart over the years. And he was a very good friend and one of the most talented directors I know, and one of the most generous people that I will ever know. When I went to Hollywood, of course, as you know, I didn't have any training to be a movie maker. I never took a class. I was already 34 years old. I had done many other business. I had been a carpenter, I'd been a painter, I had a store, but then I thought movie making would be much more fun. And so I had to borrow some money, and I thought I'd make a movie. At that time, in the 80s, this was 1984, 83, we were in the middle of what we call the video revolution. So the video revolution was when the video machine, VHS and the Betamax, came to the public, and the people who bought it now could play movies themselves. The big studios didn't care about it. They did not want their movies on video. They saw video as a threat to their business. That meant that when the little stores opened up to rent movies, they had to buy movies from independent movie makers. And so that meant that a lot of companies could now make a movie and sell it to the stores, directly to the stores, not through any big company. You could go directly, you could sell it to the stores. And the stores, every store that opened up had to buy 3,000 or 4,000 movies. And so they bought these B movies. And so these little companies, anybody with a little money could make a movie, and then you could sell it direct to the store. And this created a time for about 6-8 years in which you could make a movie. You didn't need any connection with Hollywood, and then go to the film market, like the American film market or the Hong Kong film market, and every country in the world would come to that market trying to buy movies. Now the big studio movies, they couldn't buy because they would be small companies. And they were the same small companies that were buying movies for the video store in their country. So now you could sell to France, Germany, Italy, Turkey, Korea, Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore. Every country had video stores. Every country had people buying video machines. And so you didn't need to have a studio approve of you. So for a short period of time, this was possible. Once I was lucky. I was very lucky because I made my first movie with Stuart Gordon. And he was a first-time filmmaker, like I was, but he was 12 years of being a director. He was a professional, but he was still a horror fan. And so we made Reanimator very cheap, and I knew that maybe it would not be a good movie, but I was putting all my money in it. As a producer, I would be in big trouble if that movie didn't make money or get the money back. Big trouble. So I said to Stuart, we have to make it very, very exploitation. Bloody, sexy, exciting. And then when it was finished, I didn't take it to the movie rating board because I knew that they would just want me to cut everything. So I said, no, we're not going to do that. So the movie then was very crazy. And it was way better than what we're used to in the horror movies. So this was great luck for me because then I had a good movie and then I could make another movie. Then I could make another. And then that meant that even when the video market started monopolizing, even when the studios came into the video market and pushing everybody aside, even when you couldn't sell directly to the stores anymore, you had to give to a big distributor, I had a reputation. I had a track record. So then I could still make deals based on my other movies. I never did get the connections to the big studios. I still only made movies independently with people that had smaller companies. So I never did become the big studio filmmaker. And one of the things I had to do was make movies in other countries because then I could go to Spain or Italy or Mexico or Indonesia and I could make deals to do co-productions. The first two movies I directed, Society and Bride of Reanimator, completely financed by Japanese investors. So you can see that I was able to make a living making movies without knowing who I needed to know in Hollywood. Of course, now I know many people. I've been in the business for 30, 40 years, so of course I know people, and a lot of the little people that you meet become big people. After 10 years, they become big people. Some people who have interviewed me like this from 30 years ago, now they're big shots in the studio or they're big producers, and I can go to them and say, hey, let's make a deal. So now I know some people. It's much more difficult today to do this without connections. I think in Korea you have to know CJ or something. There's only a couple of companies. And everywhere, including the US, everybody has to sell to Netflix. It's terrible. It's terrible. They don't pay anything. They take all the rights everywhere. So there's no money. There's no way to make any money. It's much worse now for business than it was when I started. So it's very difficult today. Nobody really knew Lovecraft as a brand of stories. After we made Reanimator, it was so popular, I put the name H.P. Lovecraft on the title. The reason I did is because I had nothing else to sell. I didn't have a famous director. I didn't have a famous actor. I had nothing, nothing to sell except the name of the writer, which is a kind of a cool name. After we made Reanimator, it was so good, we immediately made another Lovecraft movie based on From Beyond, a story of Lovecraft that is more Lovecraftian, as you might say. And that also it wasn't as successful as Reanimator, but it was really good. Once that happened, people started thinking about Lovecraft. And I even helped a friend of mine make a Lovecraft story called The Unnameable during the 80s. He wanted to make low-budget movies, and he asked my advice, and I said, make a Lovecraft movie. Because at least you have something to sell. Reanimator's good, From Beyond's good. And so he made a Lovecraft movie called The Unnameable, put Lovecraft on it, and so now you have another Lovecraft movie. As time went on, many people started making Lovecraft movies. I made another Lovecraft movie called Necronomicon, which was 3 Lovecraft stories. This was in 1990, I don't know, 2 or 3 or 4. So many people started making Lovecraft, but I don't think any of them are as good as the ones that Stuart Gordon and I made together. And I would say Reanimator, From Beyond, and Dagon are the best Lovecraft movies. I think that Dagon which was shown here at PFAN just a couple days ago. I think Dagon which was the last movie that I produced with Stuart, is the most true adaptation of a Lovecraft story that there is in the movies. So it's tough to adapt Lovecraft. One, he doesn't have female characters. So where's the love story? You know what the Japanese filmmakers say for a horror movie you need the 3 B's. You need the blonde, the baby, and the beast. Well, Lovecraft doesn't have the blonde. So how do you have the love story? Every movie has to have a love story. So it's usually cosmic horror, stuff that's almost impossible to depict visually. So his stories are very difficult to adapt, and it takes some great talent to be able to do it.
긴 인터뷰 감사드립니다. 그럼 마지막으로 부천을 찾아주신 영화 팬들하고 우리 무비프레스 구독자님들께 인사 부탁드릴게요.
BFAN fans and Movie Press, I'm so happy to be here. I want to return. I want to be able to speak with Movie Press again in the future. And please enjoy the movies at the festival. See you next movie.